Inside Hell: What really happens to women in maximum security prison? Subscribe for more real crime stories. Like, share, and join the discussion below. The piercing sound of the alarm echoed through the concrete halls of the Lowell Correctional Institution in Florida, announcing a crisis that would mark the institution's dark history. Guards rushed through the corridors, their faces etched with urgency. Inmate Ava Richards lay unresponsive in her cell, her lifeless body barely illuminated by the flickering light overhead. For days, she had been in and out of consciousness, suffering from untreated medical conditions, yet her cries for help went unheeded by the staff. As the news spread, former inmates surrounded the prison, holding candles and shouting for justice. What had happened to Ava? And why had the system failed her so profoundly? The nightmarish situation forced the audience to confront uncomfortable truths about life within these prison walls, leaving them yearning for answers. To understand Ava's tragic fate, we must go back to the beginning. Ava was a bright young woman, but after years of battling addiction, she found herself in a downward spiral that led to multiple arrests for drug-related offenses. Once a college student with dreams of becoming an artist, Ava's life took a drastic turn when she was sentenced to 5 years in prison. When she arrived at Lowell Correctional Institution, Ava hoped for a chance to rehabilitate. She wanted to attend educational programs, find support, and turn her life around. However, the reality of her new environment was anything but supportive. Overcrowded conditions, neglect, and a lack of medical care plagued the prison, creating an atmosphere ripe for despair. From her first day, Ava noticed the fear that permeated the halls. Inmates lived on the edge, plagued by the constant threat of violence from other prisoners and the guards. Reports of abuse and harassment were commonplace. Despite her fears, Ava clung to her hope of making friends and finding some semblance of safety. Unfortunately, this hope would soon shatter. It wasn't long before Ava fell ill, suffering from severe stomach pains that left her bedridden. When she begged for medical attention, her requests were met with indifference. Guards dismissed her, telling her to toughen up, or even worse, that she was simply trying to avoid her duties. Each passing day intensified her suffering, and her health declined dramatically. Desperate for support, Ava confided in a fellow inmate, Sarah, about the brutal conditions and the neglect she faced. Sarah, too, had witnessed the horrors experienced by women around her, many lost in a system that prioritized punishment over rehabilitation. Together, they began to speak out about their fears, but this only led them into deeper troubles. Days turned into agonizing weeks as Ava's condition deteriorated. Her cell became a prison within a prison, with loneliness and fear crippling her spirit. Just as the frustrations of Ava and Sarah reached a boiling point, an alarming incident occurred. Another inmate, Jessica, collapsed in the common area, her cries echoing off the concrete walls. The response was met with chaos as guards were nowhere to be found, despite being the first line of defense. Ava witnessed the horrific scene unfold, unable to ignore the reality she faced. How many more women had to suffer before someone took action? The looming question raised the stakes as Ava's own health issues spiraled precariously. Would her cries for help ever be answered? The tension in the air was palpable as the darkness of Lowell Correctional Institution threatened to swallow her whole. To fully grasp the tumultuous life inside the walls of Lowell Correctional Institution, we must delve into the prison's troubled history. Established to house women offenders, the institution has faced intense scrutiny for decades over its overcrowded conditions and lack of necessary medical care. An investigation by the Department of Justice had uncovered systemic neglect, transforming the facility into a breeding ground for despair and abuse. Ava's plight was not an isolated case. Women across the prison shared similar stories of suffocation, both physical and emotional. They spoke of the terrifying environment where screams echoed through the halls, often met with silence. Inmates faced discrimination, neglect, and abuse, each day feeling like a battle for survival in a place that offered no salvation. As news of Ava's deterioration circulated, former inmates who had survived the hellish landscape of Lowell began to speak out. One particular voice stood out, an outspoken woman named Emily, who had endured horrific experiences during her time in the prison. "You live in fear every single day," she recounted, describing the constant threat of violence from both guards and fellow inmates. "You're not just fighting to stay alive, you're fighting for your sanity." Emily's revelations added weight to Ava's situation, underlining a culture of silence where women were taught to accept their circumstances. She explained how reporting abuse often resulted in retribution. Inmates learned quickly that vulnerability was a dangerous trait in such a hostile environment. Emily's words provided context, illuminating the broken system that had failed Ava time and again. As the days passed, Ava's health worsened, prompting whispers among the inmates that something needed to change. They decided to take their frustrations to the guards. A group of women banded together, trying to speak out about their deteriorating conditions, but their voices were drowned out by apathy and neglect. The guards, assigned to keep order, seemed more invested in maintaining their authority than ensuring the well-being of the women. Ava's friends began to fear the worst. They knew she was too weak to fight back anymore, and as a prison lockdown was announced due to an unrelated incident, tensions escalated. During the lockdown, communication lines were severed, isolating Ava further. Without access to medical attention, her condition reached a critical level. In a shocking twist, an inmate captured Ava's declining state on her phone and shared it with the outside world. The video showed Ava's frail body, pleading for help, her voice barely a whisper. This act of defiance sent ripples through the community, but the repercussions could be deadly. Would this act draw attention to a situation that had gone unnoticed for too long? As the families of the inmates began to organize protests outside of Lowell, demanding accountability and reform, the prison administration felt the pressure mounting. Yet, amidst the chaos, Ava slipped further into the shadows, her cries for help growing faint. The stakes were higher than ever. Would the outcry be enough to save Ava, or was it too late? With the pressure from families and activists outside, the situation inside Lowell Correctional Institution reached a boiling point. The whispers of Ava's deteriorating health and the footage that had circulated online led to an external investigation. But the prison administration remained steadfast, unwilling to face the consequences of their neglect. Former inmates like Emily were now part of a growing chorus demanding change. "This isn't just about Ava. This is about every woman who's been silenced," Emily passionately stated in a public interview. "They're not just numbers. They're lives being thrown away." Her words resonated, igniting a movement that stretched beyond the prison walls. However, the administration fought back aggressively. They claimed the video was a fabrication, a ploy to undermine the safety of the prison and its staff. Their statements only fueled the fire, with protests growing larger and louder. Outside the prison, mothers, sisters, and friends gathered with signs, calling for justice for Ava and all women who faced abuses behind bars. Amidst the chaos, the prison staff grew increasingly defensive. Rather than addressing the allegations, many guards implemented stricter controls, further isolating the inmates. Ava's health crisis became a flashpoint in the hospice care system within the prison. Women began to question whether anyone would stand up for them as they fell silent behind the black bars. As the external investigation gained momentum, Ava remained in dire condition. In a desperate plea, her friends organized a sit-in within the prison, demanding immediate medical attention for Ava. As they thronged together, the guards reacted swiftly, forcing them apart. This only heightened the tension, and the possibility of violence loomed. Then came the moment that would change everything. Ava was finally taken to the medical unit after days of pressure from inmate protests. But instead of receiving proper treatment, she was confined to a room with little attention. That night, as frustration surged, Ava's condition took a fatal turn. Her friends felt something was gravely wrong, yet they were powerless to intervene. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the prison staff signaled that Ava was being transported to a local hospital. Former inmates and families hoped this would be a turning point, a moment where justice would finally play in favor of the vulnerable. But as news spread, a chilling notification reached the outside world. The hospital had confirmed Ava had passed away, her last battle overshadowed by neglect. The devastating news sent shockwaves through the community, igniting outrage and grief as everyone came to realize that the system had failed Ava in the worst possible way. Her death symbolized the broader issues within the prison system, raising urgent questions about accountability and how many more would suffer the same fate. As her friends rallied to honor Ava's memory, a determination filled the air. They would not let her story fade into silence. The cliffhanger lingered. Would Ava's tragic death spark the change desperately needed to protect the lives of women behind bars, or would her loss be just another statistic in a broken system? The fight for justice was just beginning.